Good evening, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the VAB conference in Virginia Beach. Let me say, first of all, that I would have moved heaven and earth to be there with you, but heaven and earth are easy compared to my son's wedding. I figured that about the time you're seeing this, I'll be toasting the bride and groom at the rehearsal dinner. And literally, it would take a conflict of that magnitude to keep me from being there, not only to be with my fellow broadcasters, but because of the respect that I have for this particular award. When I look at the list of previous recipients, I see many people I know, recognize, and respect. Some, like Bill Foy, I've had the pleasure of working with. Others, like Joe DeShiel and Dennis Carter, are respected competitors. And actually, during my brief stint in public relations, Joe was the recipient of many of my pitches. And then there are people who may not even know that I have admired them from afar and who have served as role models for me. People like Gene Cox and Jim Kincaid. And then Jim Shaver's on the list. He's retired now. He was a competing news director. And right now he's actually my neighbor. So it's humbling to be honored in the same category as those I mentioned and the many others on the list. Now, in today's media, with stations being bought and sold, perhaps those of you in the audience have had a similar experience to my own, whether you've traveled around or maybe stayed at the same place like I have. WSLS 10 has been owned by 3 different companies since I started at the station after transferring from WTVR in Richmond in 1987. Media General, of course, has then been in the merger and acquisition mode in recent years as well, so we've seen several iterations of MG, even though the ownership hasn't technically changed. The point being here that each new owner, each new GM, each group, each news director, and I might as well mention all the co-anchors, have all come through the door with their own idea of how things should be done. And no one was necessarily right or wrong, although obviously I agreed maybe with some more than others. But the fact is that at the end of the day, the only constant during my tenure here has been the viewers. And I'd like to say that we're all here to serve our viewers. If we kind of look at the viewers as the horizon and we keep our eyes on that line in the distance, then it's much easier to survive whatever turbulence might come from the reality of management and ownership changes and to keep focused on the real job before us as broadcasters. Now, during the NCAA tournament this year, I heard one of the coaches answer a question about how he keeps his team motivated when they play so many games so close together. And he talked about protecting the integrity of the game. Essentially what he meant was best practices, not being lazy, protecting the ball, not taking shortcuts, not taking plays off, and essentially doing the right basketball thing in any given situation. And I'd like to think that I've been able to make a career out of TV news by doing essentially that to the best of my ability, whether it's details like making sure the video matches the script, making a phone call to get one more level of confirmation on a fact, making sure my tie is straight so it's not distracting from the message, or suffering with the community through major news events like the terrorist attacks or the shootings at Virginia Tech. It all matters. It's just like basketball. Just as they must protect the ball, we must protect the broadcast and doing the right things for the right reasons. Now, a friend of mine who worked in sales at a high level in television used to joke about the newsroom. It's the only place in the world, he said, where everybody runs around every day with their hair on fire. The deadlines, the egos, the pressures that come with getting it right and getting it first. I think we have all said this before, it's definitely a pressure cooker, and it's a wonder we're not all parboiled. And that's why I believe it's important for organizations like the VAB to recognize longevity and contribution with the George Bowles Jr. Award. Nobody outside this business has any clue how television news works. That was painfully obvious during the 4.5 years that I worked in public relations. So we as broadcasters are uniquely able to understand what it takes to do our jobs every day. So that makes this award even more valuable. So I'd like to thank the association not only for the recognition, but for honoring longtime broadcasters who have survived all these years with our hair on fire. And I survived a lot of situations because of what I learned from 2 people in particular during my time at WTVR television in the mid-1980s. I'd like to mention former anchor there Charles Fishburne, who helped me immeasurably, and veteran news photographer Jack Rusak, who taught me more about what a TV story is than anyone else. I'd also like to thank my wife and children for tolerating the crazy schedule and long hours that come with this job, and I'd like to acknowledge my parents, Jack and Elaine, for raising me with the moral code and work ethic that has served me well since I keyed the mic at my first job in broadcasting at WLFH 1230 AM, your hometown radio station, a 1,000-watt radio station in Little Falls, New York, and that was Christmas Eve of 1980. Also thanks to the wonderful team of colleagues at WSLS and WTVR that I've had the pleasure to work beside, past, present, and future, and to my current news director, Rick Moll, for submitting my name for consideration. Again, I wish I could be there with you, but I do have this little family event to attend to. Thanks again, and good night.